All the world's a stage, at least that's what they say. But for genre, specifically science fiction and fantasy, the stage is a rare venue. Not so much for horror. You do get the occasional War of the Worlds or Rocky Horror Picture Show or Little Shop of Horrors. The scare is a little bit easier to do on stage, and that's what they're doing here at the Living Room in Kansas City. It's a production called Pontypool, and the moral of the story, words can kill. The story takes place in Pontypool, a small town in Canada that becomes ground zero for a new, deadly virus. A virus that's spread not in the usual way, but by the use of language, something that complicates the life of radio talk show host Grant Massey, played by John Rensenhouse.
Virus develops outside, world is crumbling, falling apart. What do? We are transmitting the virus through the radio. Words are infected.
The story by Canadian Tony Burgess is based on his radio play, which is based on his movie, which is based on a book. It was all adapted for the stage here in Kansas City by Kimberly Queen and Cody Wyoming.
A friend of mine gave me a copy of the movie. I was directing a show here at the Living Room called A Bucket of Blood, and a friend of mine gave me a movie, and she said, "You need to see this movie." And she gave me a copy of it, and I went home and watched it after a performance of the show that we were doing here one night. And she's like, if anybody is gonna love this, you're gonna love this. She knows me very well, and she was absolutely right. I loved it immediately, and my girlfriend Kimmy was like, this ought to be the next show that we do.
It was more of a challenge than we had understood, because when we did our first show, Bucket of Blood, it was like 14 or 15 people in the cast, multiple costume changes, which I did the costumes for both this and that. It wasn't tech heavy. This one we thought was going to be easy because it's just this environment that you see here, and only 4 actors with 0 costume changes, but it was very challenging because they had to synchronize every sound cue and every technical aspect with actual movements, and we had to, Cody did most of the choreography between the dialogue and it being practical and you're hearing it. That was very difficult. It was very challenging. That was probably the most challenging part of the show.
To me, the most important thing of getting this across was making sure that the show operated like a real radio station. I wanted it to look as much as possible like people were at a radio station doing their jobs. And I believe that, you know, grounding it in reality was going to, when the fantastical elements begin to appear, the more grounded in the actual reality we are, the more you're going to buy those fantastical elements when they start to emerge.
This is deliciously weird. I thought it was odd, and I wanted to see how we would achieve the ideas of the play theatrically, because theater's a different beast than radio, obviously. And I was excited about the storytelling in it, and so that, but mainly the thought was, this is weird, I can't wait to work on it.
I really like the sort of intellectual quality of it, that it wasn't just your regular horror slasher thing, that it really had a big idea about words and how we can become infected by the language we use. And so that intrigued me quite a bit. So then when I read the script, I thought, oh, okay, well, can I do this? And ultimately, we decided, yeah, we can do this.
He's the man who has the gift of talking, and crisis is happening to him. He's the one who has the gift of talking, and his gift is being riddled with a virus. So he has to kind of choose what to do in that crisis. And he chooses to talk, because that's where his strengths lie. That's what he knows, so what is he going to do? Go be quiet? He's the radio shock jock guy.
I was familiar with the film and the book, Pontypool Changes Everything. And when I read the script that Cody Wyoming had given me, I thought, this is going to creep everybody out and be a fantastic journey.
I wanted to create an environment that the audience could be in with the characters, and I wanted them to be inside that radio station. With a lot of traditional theater, with the proscenium, you know, you're watching a thing, and I wanted to bring the audience inside this show and have them feel the claustrophobia that the characters are feeling, and so it offered nothing but positives for staging wise. It was like, yeah, draw everybody in, bring it real close, keep it real close, and that was my intention, is hopefully that would ratchet up the terror factor, certainly.
The reality for the people that are watching it, I think what we achieve by putting people in this room is that immediate notion of claustrophobia. We walk in, there's 40 chairs in here at best. So it, I think, encourages the audience to participate in a very lean in kind of way, until we start to make them to want to try to get away from some of the things that they see.
But I think it's actually a very serious work, oddly enough, because, you know, the words we use, and especially since we're in a presidential campaign now, which is the perfect time to do it, when words are like thrown around like a virus, you know, where you have to speak in a certain way and stuff.
My goal was to strike some discomfort in people live, because a lot of, if you're dealing with horror or thriller elements, a lot of times on stage, it's not really depicted. A lot of times it's not very scary, but I wanted this to be where people got afraid in their own minds, sitting in their own seats, questioning what is going on, the way that the cast was questioning what is going on. I wanted that immersion, and both of our shows we began with the actors doing their acting in an environment that you come into. Instead of here comes the curtain, the show is beginning, you get lulled into their environment, so that maybe that it has a little bit more grip on you because you have become a part of the environment.
That confinement also factored into the planning for the special effects. After all, it is a horror show.
Well, since we're working in with prosthetics, with the effects, we're working in such a small space. It's like a space within the space. So that can be very contained, and you can kind of guess what you want. You know, you work with the director, you work with the writers, and you kind of see like what that thing is going to do. And then first you build the prosthetic, then you build the thing that the prosthetic does, then you adapt whatever you've made to the actual space that you're working in. So that was part of the process. Like it's several steps.
We knew what we wanted to do, knowing that it needs to be taken off and put on very quickly. So Tabitha had a lot of ideas of making it stronger so that it wouldn't be as weak and rip. So we were thinking about all of that stuff when we designed it.
Yes, bodies, blood, you know, all sorts of stuff is happening. But at the root of it, it's a very intellectual notion that is driving the horror of the story.
Ideas themselves are just a virus. So you have any idea that you have that you pass on to someone else who gets the same idea. That's, in theory, what viruses do.
I want them to engage in a conversation about it and possibly realize that midway through that exact conversation is the reason why they would have been dead in Pontypool in the life of this play. That the method by which they figure it out is the method of death for everybody else they've just spent the last 70 minutes with.
If you pay attention to the way you talk, and the line I say in the end when I'm struggling to stay alive, about, you know, it is not safe to be the things I say. That is a very unsettling thing, because where do we live? Where do we live? We live in speech. We live in the things we say.
Pontypool is showing at the Living Room here in Kansas City now through January 31st. And if you want to find out more information about it, you can go to thelivingroomkc.com.